All right, today we're going to dive into a story that honestly is about so much more than just an airline. Yeah, on the surface, we're talking about the sale of Pakistan's national carrier PIA, which has been struggling for, well, forever. But if you look just a little bit deeper, what you'll find is a perfect masterclass in how power really protects itself.
And this single sentence right here, this is the key. It's the key to this entire explainer. You see, it comes from an analysis of an article written by two people who are deep insiders in Pakistan's economic system. And what it's really telling us is that the official story we're all hearing about PIA's privatization, well, it's missing some of the most important chapters.
So, okay, what is that official story? Well, on paper, it's actually pretty simple. You've got this state-owned airline, it's been bleeding money for decades, right? And now the government has finally decided to sell it off. Seems straightforward enough.
The public reason we're given is, crystal clear. PIA is a financial black hole, a money pit, and selling it is being framed as this painful but totally necessary move to stop us, the taxpayers, from having to fund these endless losses. It's textbook economic reform 101. Or is it? Okay, and this is where the story gets really fascinating. An article pops up, written by two men, Nadeem ul Haq and Shahid Kardar, and they offer a critique of this whole process. But here's the kicker. This wasn't some attack from the outside. No, this was more like a confession, coming from the very heart of the system itself.
Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand who these authors are. I mean, we're not talking about just any commentators here. These guys are the architects of the very language of reform that's used in Pakistan. They know exactly how decisions get made, and maybe even more importantly, how they're avoided. So when they speak, it's not just theory. It's a rare glimpse behind the curtain.
And here is their core argument. And wow, it is devastatingly accurate. That huge 670 billion rupee cleanup cost for PII, that wasn't new debt created by the sale. No, it was just making visible, for the very first time, all the losses that taxpayers, you and me, had already been covering for years and years. The privatization didn't create the mess, it just pulled back the sheet.
So here's the thing. Their economic logic, it's flawless, it's airtight. You really can't argue with it. But it's also incomplete. Because this whole saga, it isn't really about economics, it's about politics, it's about power. And that is exactly where their article suddenly goes quiet.
And that brings us to the most critical part of this entire analysis, the questions. The questions that these insiders deliberately chose not to ask. And let me tell you, these omissions are way more revealing than anything they actually put down on paper.
They say it right there in black and white. The system is designed this way. But then they just stop. The first, most obvious question you have to ask is, well, who designed it? Who were the architects of this mess? And who benefits from a system that's literally built to fail?
I mean, just think about it for a second. If an airline is constantly failing, constantly getting bailed out, and constantly delaying any real reform, doesn't it stand to reason that someone, somewhere, is actually benefiting from all that chaos, from that total lack of accountability? So, who is it?
And what about the people who are supposedly in charge? The article correctly points out that corporate boards are overseeing this massive destruction of value. Okay, fair enough. But who is appointing those people to the boards in the first place?
And this might just be the biggest question of all. Year after year, these appointees fail, and I mean spectacularly, yet there are absolutely zero consequences. No lawsuits, no damage to their reputations, nothing. So who is providing that protection? The silence around these questions is absolutely deafening.
And when you start to answer those questions, you begin to see the real system at play here. And let me tell you, it is not incompetence.
No, this is a carefully, meticulously constructed system. A system the source material calls shielded failure.
So what does that mean, shielded failure? Well, it's a system where failure isn't just tolerated, it's actually managed. The whole setup is designed to make sure that when things inevitably go wrong, the blame lands squarely on disposable players, the fall guys. Meanwhile, the real power brokers, the ones who designed the system in the first place, they remain completely untouched, totally invisible.
So how do they pull this off? Well, let's just take a look at the role of these corporate boards. Publicly, right, we're told they're the decision makers. They're supposed to be creating value. But in this system of shielded failure, their actual purpose is to be shock absorbers. Their job is to absorb the blame, protecting the real power that put them there. Think of it this way. They're not steering the ship. They're the designated life rafts for the captain.
And this all leads to a pretty brutal truth. The complete lack of transparency we see in deals like this, that's not a mistake. It's not a sign of incompetence. It is a deliberate feature of the system. Opacity, keeping things murky, is a form of risk management for the elite. If there's no paper trail, then no responsibility can ever be pinned on anyone. It protects everyone involved.
So, the Insider's article. It gets really close to hitting a nerve at one point. It briefly mentions this possibility of the Fauji Fertilizer Company, a huge military-linked conglomerate, taking over PIA. Now, this is a politically explosive idea. And what do the authors do? They mention it, and then they immediately, and I mean immediately, change the subject. That little sidestep is no accident. It is completely deliberate.
And that little move, that sidestep, allows them to avoid the biggest, most uncomfortable question of all. If a state-owned company is sold to another powerful entity that's also deeply connected to the state, is that really privatization? Or is it just moving an asset from one pocket of the state to another while making sure the public gets stuck with all the debt?
Okay, so let's put all of these pieces together. What does this all really mean? What was the real function of this insider critique we've been looking at?
Well, according to the source material, the Insider's article is doing three very specific things. First, it defends the idea of privatization in general. It says, hey, the concept is good. Second, it shifts all the blame onto this vague, abstract thing called governance failure. And third, and this is the most critical part, it very carefully avoids naming or confronting the actual power blocks that benefit from this whole setup. You see, it critiques how things fail, but it never ever asks who ensures they fail safely for the powerful.
So this entire complex story, all this stuff about economics and power and politics, it can all be boiled down to one single powerful sentence.
And there it is. In Pakistan, privatization isn't reform. It's not about creating some bright, shiny, efficient new future. It is simply the final accounting after a long, protected failure. It's the moment the bill finally comes due for years and years of failure that was deliberately shielded from any consequence, with the public, of course, picking up the final tab. It's not a new beginning. It's a final accounting.